Okay, I'm back. I'll wait for you guys to join. I'm just gonna sip my coffee because, like, coffee. I'm obsessed right now with, hey Ivy, how are you? I'm just waiting for everyone to join. And if I missed one of your guys' questions, just ask it again and I'll get to it. Sorry, sometimes I go through questions so slow because I'm trying to, like, explain the whole picture and I talk too much. Okay. Can you please share liver testing optimal levels and any supplements in addition to food? So liver testing, you guys, I mean, they're testing for liver enzymes like ALT and stuff, but, usually symptoms are a better indicator that your liver is stagnant than actually, like, saying, oh, my liver numbers are good. Like, lab tests are, who cares? Labs are a snapshot in time. And I don't care if your labs are great, but you are not doing well. So it's kind of one of those things where labs are a tool, but they're not the whole tool. So one of the biggest signs that your liver is stagnant is that smells bother you. When you are very sensitive to fragrances, or like they even give you a headache, that's a bad sign. Because if what's coming in the lungs is not making it through the liver and it's causing issues in the brain, then you got some serious issues. But that's usually one of the signs. Like, I always ask people, are you sensitive to smells? Are you sensitive to chemicals? And I'm not saying, like, you should, like, sniff a Bath and Body Works candle all day. Like, that stuff is toxic AF. But it's like, if you can't handle it and it, like, really bothers you, there's a liver issue going on. Some other signs of, like, liver stagnation is that you wake up really not hungry, or you wake up even nauseous. You have, like, a low-grade nausea all day. You get, like, right pain underneath your liver or gallbladder, or even, like, a soreness or, like, a gurgling sometimes. It's okay if your gallbladder gurgles from time to time, but if you're, like, getting, like, constant, like, pains in your liver, probably not a great thing. And then, like, if you're not digesting fats very well, meaning if your stool is floating, that's a problem, usually with the liver or the gallbladder or stomach acid. I'm trying to think, sorry. Acne, rashes, any kind of, like, skin issues, eczema, is almost always liver. So I usually go by symptoms, but you can get, like, your just regular liver enzymes tested. Ground beef cooked in ghee, mashed potatoes with butter and milk, and cooked onion. Would you say that this is an ideal plate? Yeah, traditional whole foods, easy to digest, perfect. Like, super simple, right? But, like, so delicious. Like, doesn't ground beef cooked in ghee, mashed potatoes with butter and milk, and cooked onions sound, like, so good? Like, it's, like, appealing to you, right? It just, like, makes your mouth water. That's how food should be. It should not be like, I'm chomping on this kale leaf now. It's like, come on, so that to me is, like, a very ideal plate, especially if you're tolerating those foods really well. I know it can sometimes take a while to get to the point where you can tolerate foods like that. If that sounds like, wow, I could never handle that, then there's some work to do. But yes, to me, that is, like, an ideal plate. You've got your protein in both the ground beef and the milk. You've got some really healthy saturated fats in the ghee and the butter and the milk, and then you have some good fibers, some good plant material in the cooked onion, but it's broken down in the cooking process. And and then you've got the carbs and the starches in the mashed potatoes. Whenever you do starches, you want them to be very well cooked, not overcooked, but, like, you should never consume undercooked starches. And so mashed potatoes tend to be very easy to digest, especially when the skins are removed, because the skins are usually the most inflammatory part of the potato. And a lot of people digest them better than like, sweet potatoes. But if you're sensitive to nightshades, then they can be a problem. But yeah, that's a wonderful plate. Love it. Hi, started small dose of Nature Thyroid and TSH is climbing. Yeah, because a lot of doctors don't tell people that when you start Nature Thyroid, if you don't eat according to your speeding up metabolic rate, you're going to just cause stress. TSH is a sign, higher TSH is a sign that your pituitary gland, because remember, your pituitary is the one that pumps out TSH, is saying, hey, we're stressed, we're super duper stressed. And so thyroid medication comes with a very big responsibility. If you're not going to eat according to your increased metabolic rate regarding thyroid, you're just going to feel worse. I got salmonella in Costa Rica and I'm having a hard time getting back to my best self. What can help? is the salmonella gone? Did you take antibiotics, or did you do something to actually remove the salmonella? Activated charcoal can be helpful in some situations, like especially if you feel like something's stemming from the gut. Sometimes when we come down with these pathogens or these infections, remember that pathogens are an ecosystem, and we usually don't ever just get one pathogen, especially if it's an ongoing infection. Like, for example, you got salmonella, but what did, like, in your body fighting that infection and under that stress, what maybe occurred? What imbalance could have occurred? Because, you know, your stomach acid levels were probably low at that point because you were really stressed out and your central nervous system was turned on. And so did other pathogens get into the gut at that time? Were there parasites that got in there? Were there, you know, fungal overgrowth? Was there small intestinal bacteria overgrowth that's kind of taken up residence in your gut? And so those are questions that need to ask ourselves. Sometimes the answer isn't just in the infection that we thought we had, but what did that infection allow us to get as well? And remember, you guys, like, we put so much trust in medicine, but we have to understand that there's so much about the body that we just don't comprehend. We don't understand. There's pathogens that have never been discovered before when it comes to parasites and protozoa and this and that. And so, you know, we have to know that, like, even if we've gotten the most comprehensive stool test done, there is always going to be an air of mystery about the body. And we have to understand that. And we have to lean into that. So we have to do what we know. And it's like, so I always say, like, I know you were breastfeeding in the past. So I don't know if you're still breastfeeding. But if you're still breastfeeding and, like, you know, that's depleting on your body as well, which is such a wonderful thing. Like, of course you're going to breastfeed. Like, are you kidding me? But I'm just kind of making the point that maybe you're, like, not at your best self because you know, your body was under stress from the pathogens. And then if you have other pathogens going on, it's like, that's kind of immune suppressing or metabolically suppressive. And then you're breastfeeding and you're feeding a child, you're growing a baby, you know, and it's like, that's so wonderful. But that's also depleting on your body. And so it can just be like a lot. And so I would say that that's probably why you don't feel your best self. It's kind of like you need to, like, kind of take it as, like, okay, it's time for a clean slate. I need to start rebuilding my body from the ground up. And what's the first step to that? Well, the first step is, like, making sure you're eating enough and eating more frequently, and probably eating, like, if you feel like a lot of your issues are stemming from gut, then probably, like, I say, like, go back to the beginning. Like, feed yourself like you would feed a baby. You know, really easy to digest, pre-broken down foods, you know, making sure you're chewing your foods really well when it comes to, like, meats, probably staying away from a lot of, like, fibrous foods. Like, I'm not a huge fan, like, when people are really metabolically impaired or not feeling their best, they see such benefit in actually taking out a lot of above ground raw vegetables and eating mainly, like, cooked underground vegetables, like starches, lots of ripe fruits, and then, like, really well cooked above ground vegetables. Like, you know what I mean? Like, really well cooked greens, or greens put into a broth, doing lots of healing broths, doing lots of nutrient dense foods, like in the form of, like, liver if you can tolerate it, you know, grass-fed meats, and raw dairy or dairy products if you can handle them. You know, really, like, focusing on, I need to give my body an abundance of the tools it's going to use to rebuild itself, seeing healing in that perspective. And I would start there. I think sometimes, like, we can get really confused with all these people that we follow on Instagram or this or that, and we feel like, oh, I need to be, like, making my avocado into a rose and, like, taking that obscure, like, sea algae from the Mediterranean. And it's like, no, you gotta just, like, make sure you're eating regularly and, like, eating some nutrient dense foods. You know, like, this is, like, you know, I want you guys to not be fooled. Instagram is, like, the new commercials. Like, people are getting you guys so good. They're like, you need to be doing this and you need to be doing this, and they're making a quick buck off you. And I think it's, like, really selfish of them because they're making you, or convincing you, that you need to be doing all these obscure things when you really just need to make sure you're having fun, you're doing things you're enjoying, you're hanging out with your family, you're getting outside in the sunshine, you're getting out in nature, you're simplifying your life. Stop buying a bunch of shit you don't need. It weighs you down. Eating really well, nourishing traditional foods, you know, drinking water when you're thirsty, listening to your body, pursuing passions that you enjoy, sleeping well, prioritizing your sleep, reading more, getting off screens less. I mean, those are, like, the basics to health. And if those things aren't happening, nothing's happening, you guys. I don't care how much you spend on that supplement from your functional medicine doctor. It's not going to do jack squat because the basics, the foundations are not being met. Your body's like, hey, I'm calling out for this. And you're telling it like, hey, I need this. And so I just recommend, like I always say, unlearn to learn. And like I always say, like start with a clean slate. Like sit down with yourself, set aside some time on the weekend is kind of nice, and just like sit down and, like I said in my live before, write down your whole health history. Ask yourself to be real with yourself for just a moment and say, when did I feel my best? What was I doing then? A lot of times women will say, at that point I was very unconcerned with my health. I just did what felt good. I ate what felt good. I moved when it felt good. Like a lot of women, when I actually have them sit down and get real and say, when did you feel your best? They were like, I just wasn't really like worried about my health. Like I just ate, kind of bad and kind of, and I'm like, you need to go back to that point where you were intuitively eating, but then take the information that you know now and implement it there, so, when you're craving a salty, crunchy food, you're not going to go down the street to McDonald's and grab some French fries. You're going to make yourself some baked potatoes with coconut oil and lots of yummy salt, and you're going to chow that down with some organic ketchup, and you're going to satiate that craving, but you're also going to do it in a body honoring way. Like really take it back to the beginning, kind of try to shed all the information that you don't need anymore. And I know when it comes like to a new baby, you're also really worried. There's a lot of worry there. There's a lot of anxiety there. You're just caring so deeply about that child that is a part of you, and like you have this love that you don't experience with anybody else. And so there is like a level of anxiety and stress that comes with motherhood. And so like women kind of need to face that too, is like there's an amount of stuff we can't control, and so we can't try to control every small little thing in our child's lives because it's going to drive you crazy and it's going to make you sick, and they're going to like feed off of that as well. And so all that to say is, I know you got salmonella, but it might be something more. It might be that the salmonella like opened up to other pathogens, and you kind of got to go back to the beginning and just make sure you're hitting those foundations. And then if those foundations really aren't making you feel better and feel your best, at that point it might be a good idea to just get like some kind of comprehensive stool test done, or something where you can see all the pathogens in your gut that could be irritating you. Also, post-pregnancy, some women have low thyroid function or low progesterone, and that can be causing like an off feeling in them. Sometimes high prolactin can be causing an off feeling. You need prolactin to produce breast milk, but you don't want high prolactin. That's gonna suppress a lot of other hormones, and we don't want that happening. You mentioned that nystatin works for yeast infections. Does it actually kill all the yeast, or will it come back? Wondering if I should take it for a yeast issue I'm having. Nystatin can be helpful, but here's the deal. Like, you can never take one round of something and expect it to take care of all of your yeast issues. Remember that yeast and pathogens are it's not just the pathogens that are the problem. They build these homes around them that are like these jelly-like structures that a lot of women will see when they do like a coffee enema, that are called biofilms. And biofilms in themselves are sometimes a problem, because you think these pathogens, like, what do they build these biofilms out of? They build them out of the most nasty, decrepit things in your body. They build them out of like heavy metals. They build them out of like other dead pathogens. They build them out of like mucosal, like they'll pull some like mucosal bacteria, and then they'll also like pull fecal matter, like things from the fecal matter, and like build these like structures around themselves. And so when you take like an antifungal or something like that, you might have had such a mature biofilm or such a mature pathogenic growth that these pathogens are like hidden in the pockets of your intestine behind these biofilms, and they're like watching nystatin pass by, and they're like, like they don't care. And it's because they're smart. Pathogens are so smart. They are like so they've really adapted to becoming resilient. This is why we're having such a problem with antibiotic resistance and things like that. So what I recommend is, I think biofilm breakers are really, really helpful when you're going to actually do like an antifungal protocol, but they can be harsh in themselves. They're usually like proteolytic enzymes, like really high amounts of enzymes that actually dissolve the biofilms and break them down. Like BioFibrin by Inspired Nutrition is one of my favorite ones. And then the proteolytic enzymes by Doctor's Best is also really good. You always want to take them on an empty stomach. And diatomaceous earth is also a really good biofilm disruptor. It kind of like, it is like razor blades, and it kind of like slices through these biofilms, breaks them down. So I actually like would recommend as a hack to take those like for a week before you go on the nystatin. And then you've broken down a little bit of those biofilms, and then you actually are now killing the yeast. But that can be really helpful. But nystatin is really powerful, and it's a systemic antifungal, meaning it actually doesn't just stay localized in, or no, nystatin does stay localized in the intestine. So diflucan is systemic. So that's why diflucan works with like yeast infections and things, because diflucan will actually get out of the intestines and into other areas of your body, like the sinus cavities and the vagina. But nystatin is a little bit more powerful, but it only stays localized in the intestinal tract. So it kind of depends on what yeast issue you're having. But nystatin can be really helpful for like if you're struggling with overgrowth of candida and things like that. What kind of coffee and sugar do you use? Honestly, I just buy the organic coffee from Costco. And then sugar I go in between like organic cane sugar, and then I really like this coconut sugar that is like vanilla flavored. It's just like has some vanilla bean in it, and then it's coconut sugar. It's really, really good in coffee. And then I do like a little bit of heavy cream as well. Does neem work as an antifungal? I've heard both bad and good things about neem oil for yeast. Yeah, neem oil can be really helpful for yeast, but neem is so, make sure like if you are pregnant, or you could be pregnant, or somebody around you could be pregnant, if that even touches them, they can actually start having uterine contractions. So it can, like, it's definitely a harsh oil for sure, but it's like super unsafe for like pregnancy, or like anyone that could be pregnant. Like you can't even touch a pregnant woman with neem, or it can actually put them into like early labor, or could have uterine contractions. For antifungals, honestly, I love oregano and I love undecylinic acid. Those are like my two favorites. Neem can be helpful. So can caprylic acid, MCT oil, Pau d'Arco, like Pau d'Arco tea, will go right through you and it will clean everything out. Like you'll feel that yeast dying. And then like just the regulars, like black wormwood and cloves, and like just the regular like antibacterials and anti-parasitics are usually pretty antifungal as well. Okay, I bought the Swedish bitters for my gut health. Not sure how much and how often to use. I recommend like starting really like conservative with that, like really conservative, like maybe half a teaspoon before a meal. They can be really rough tasting, so just like hang in there. And then just kind of see how it affects your digestion. You would want to work up to like the full dose, I think is like a teaspoon before meals, and just see how it feels. And I would just play around with it, but it's best taken before meals to stimulate digestion. Thank you so much for your answer on differences between PCOS and hypothalamic amenorrhea. I got this problem. I got diagnosed with PCOS, but I only have these follicles and high AMH. I do not have high androgenic symptoms. Interesting. Yeah, so I would definitely look into HA for sure. If low DHEA and low estrogen, what could cause low DHEA? Anything to support to help increase estrogen. So the goal is not to necessarily increase estrogen. It's more to get DHEA levels regular, which, you know, the adrenals are responsible for making DHEA. And the adrenals need lots of nutrients, and the adrenals need lots of minerals, specifically salt. So like I said before, whenever it comes to a low, like, you know, the brain and the adrenals are not on par with each other. They're not communicating any longer just due to long-term being under stress. It's really time to lower stress in the form of lots and lots of salt. Don't restrict carbohydrates. I mean, upwards, like when someone has HA or loss of a period or low DHEA, I'm pushing like 150 to 200 to 250 grams of carbohydrates. I'm getting their calories up to 2,500-ish usually. We're really like giving the body the safety it needs. We're also doing like probably meal times like every 2 hours on the dot, 2 to 3, and then, you know, eating within an hour of waking, eating a bedtime snack before bed, you know, really just taking stress off the body with food. And then salt is also really important for taking stress off the body. And then that's where I would start. And then it's kind of like you go up from there. But usually it takes about 6 to 8 weeks to really start to see something like that kick in. And it takes consistency. And that's going to be the same thing for like hypothalamic amenorrhea, should be treated like a stress issue. How do we help our liver? I recommend making sure you have enough glucose coming in, because remember, you know, the liver needs to be full of 150 grams of glucose at all times to have a proper liver detoxification. Protein is very essential, so about 100 grams per day, depending on how, you know, if you've restricted protein in the past, you might have higher needs for those amino acids. And then saturated fats. Lots of plant fats, really slow liver detoxification. Then lots of B vitamins. And then I actually have a liver detox guide on my website that's very, very helpful. It just talks about like the different foods. Beets are very helpful for the liver, apples, doing like castor oil packs, coffee enemas are wonderful for the liver, and then like regular like liver supportive supplements like milk thistle and N-acetylcysteine and stuff like that. But remember that those supplements are kind of more of the cherry on top, and if you're doing all the wrong things, meaning like you're not eating nutrient dense or you're not eating the nutrients your liver needs, it's very difficult for the liver to like go through its pathways of detoxification. Coffee can be helpful for the liver, but you cannot do coffee when your liver's empty of glucose. That's like a pear made in hell. It can really stimulate the stress response. So we want to make sure metabolism is high, T3 is high, progesterone is high, we're ovulating. Those are all really necessary for cell function. And remember, your liver cells are what's doing the detoxifying. Now I'm thinking about just eating more, as I guess maybe the HA is my problem. When I got diagnosed, to be honest, I was eating healthy but clearly too little and exercising frequently. Yeah, you should try eating more and just like relaxing a little more. Like when you do exercise, do it kind of based on how you're feeling. A lot of women with HA kind of just take a break for a while from anything intense, and they'll like walk and stretch and just, you know, jump on a rebounder. Like they just kind of like take a really relaxed approach, and know that you might gain a little weight. Like sometimes people with HA have to gain a little bit of body fat in order to get their periods back, to get back to ovulating. Because remember, your goal is to get back to ovulating, not just get your period, but actually to ovulate. And it can take a little time. I call these the healing pounds. It's usually like 5 to 10 or so, but just trust your body, know that it needs to feel that safety. And then once you get your period back and those hormones kick in, specifically progesterone, usually your metabolism picks up and you begin to burn through your fuel a lot quicker. What do you think about vegetable juices? I really like juices. I even like fruit juices, but I think that they should not be like, you know, what is your purpose for them? Like, for example, I really like tie in juices to a meal, or I use them in like a smoothie that is still balanced with protein, carb, and fat. Just like with anything that I recommend, whenever a woman is struggling hormonally or metabolically, they always need to be very careful about how they combine their nutrients. As you get more like healed, I guess you could say, or as you're more resilient to stress, you tend to be able to handle, you know, carbs on their own or protein on their own or something like that. Not that you would want to do that all the time, but like you can drink a juice here and there on its own with no problem. But when you're first trying to heal, your body can't really handle individual macronutrients. Like it tends to, like, carbs will spike your blood sugar too high, or protein will put it too low. Like your body's just very unstable and very sensitive. So when it comes to juices, including vegetable juices, I just recommend like consuming them when you are eating a meal or something like that contains protein, carb, and fat. But I think they're really great. You're getting all the nutrients from a vegetable without having to digest the fiber, which can be good. Hi from Canada. I'm enjoying your show. I'm a 46-year-old female with 1 child since my pregnancy, and I am depletion. I've been told time and time again from my acupuncturist that I have a stagnant liver. What can I do on my own to start remedying it? Oh, you have your iron depleted. Got it. So for iron depletion, I just recommend making sure you're eating like some grass-fed liver. once a week, and making sure you're eating some grass-fed beef regularly, but also make sure you're breaking it down well. Remember, like sometimes iron issues is just an absorption issue. You're not actually like absorbing it well. And then when it comes to like liver stagnation, like I just said, you want to make sure you're getting enough protein. You want to make sure you're getting a lot of your fats from saturated sources, and then something like milk thistle or N-acetylcysteine or like some liver detoxification support like dandelion root can be very helpful for the liver. Is it normal to feel winded during my period? No, it's not normal, but it can be like a sign that you are like, what are you doing during your period, first of all? Like, I do recommend having, like, being in sync with your cycle, understanding where you're at in your cycle, because sometimes women, like, they don't stop their go, go, go schedule while they're on their period. You have to remember you're being depleted. And so some women need to consume a little bit more calories during that time. They need to take a little bit more rest during that time. And a lot of women are like, they're still on their gym schedule, or they're still doing their regular, their go, go, go. And I'm like, you really need to set aside a few days to, at least when you can, just relax. And so sometimes that's enough, but if you're feeling winded, make sure you're eating enough, make sure you're not in that kind of stressed out stress response. Are you drinking too much caffeine? You're very sensitive to caffeine during your period. So those are kind of some things I would check in with, because that can really affect the amount of oxygen that's coming in. And then like something that's very simple to get more oxygen in your body so you feel less winded is just to sit down and do some deep breathing. Sometimes when we're cramping, we're actually like holding our stomach in, we're like kind of clenching, and it can actually make us clench our diaphragm, so we're not breathing as deeply. And so we can kind of like, we're taking like these really shallow breaths, and so we do get winded a lot quicker just because we're like lacking some oxygen. How to protect the gut if we really have to take antibiotics. I don't really think antibiotics are as bad as like people are like, like antibiotics, all this stuff. It's the overuse of antibiotics that are the problem. Usually like using antibiotics about once a year is actually pretty good. And just eat like you normally eat, like eat well, sleep well, just during the whole round. A lot of people will like recommend you take probiotics while you're on antibiotics. Don't do that. It's bad, because you have to let your body actually recover in its own way and restore its own bacterial balance. And remember that antibiotics are digestively suppressive, and the worst thing that you can do is get bacteria into the small intestine, which is a lot of times why like people end up seeing like their long-term probiotic use, 2 to 3 years, they end up getting SIBO because they're putting bacteria into their small intestine. So there's actually a study that was recently done that showed that taking probiotics with antibiotics actually prevents your body from healing quicker. So usually your body can recover quite quickly from an antibiotic course if just given the right fuel. Like you're just eating properly, you're just doing all the right things and just letting the body kind of take its course. The body will usually reproliferate the gut on its own. It's just the overuse of antibiotics. Like you're not like letting your body rest between antibiotics. Like it does take about 3 to 6 months to recover from antibiotics completely, but don't try to mess with nature too much and like throw all the probiotics into your body, because then you can really start to mess with the bacterial balance. Like a lot of people think that probiotics are like harmless, and I'm like, oh, I've seen too much harm done for sure. Is using salt got directly from a salt mine in Romania okay, or only Himalayan pink salt works? That sounds amazing to me. That sounds wonderful. Just make sure that sometimes salt mines are like next to like big factories or something, and remember salt draws things to itself, including toxins, and so you just need to make sure that like the source of your salt is not coming from a place that was like next to a paint factory. You know what I mean? Like you need to make sure that your salt came from a clean source, but a salt mine in Romania sounds pretty good. Why is low carb important? Low carb is not important. I actually am like not a fan of low carb. Will focusing on fixing my hormones through food end up healing my gut too, or is hormone fixing and gut healing 2 separate protocols? So here's like my philosophy. I believe that the gut slows down and the gut really becomes dysbiotic because the metabolism slows down. If the cells themselves, meaning that the T3 in your body, remember, T3 is what determines how well your cells themselves work. Your intestinal cells, your liver cells, your ovary cells, every single cell in your body. If you are low in T3, everything in your body slows down. Everything. And your cells become more leaky, meaning that they can't hold on to nutrients or retain nutrients properly. Things come in and out of them that are not supposed to. And so I believe that gut breakdown is a result of metabolic breakdown. Does the gut issues come first or the metabolic issues come first? Sometimes, people have severe gut issues that are causing metabolic issues, but I find that unless you're like really abusing your gut, like you're drinking lots of alcohol and you're eating really crappy food all the time, and you're just doing everything wrong in the book, taking tons of antibiotics and all that stuff. Okay, of course your metabolic stress is coming from the gut. But on the flip side, did you get gut issues because everything was moving through your digestive tract really slowly, and metabolic stress and low T3 was causing low stomach acid and low digestive enzymes in the first place, and so that's what allowed pathogens to take up residence in your gut, and food to be improperly break down, and so inflammation is occurring. So a lot of times I think that women are under eating so long that everything starts to slow down. Their digestive enzymes are low, hydrochloric acid is low, they begin to get some small intestinal bacteria overgrowth. They're eating things that are really irritating their gut. Like there's a lot of women right now eating lots of raw vegetables, lots and lots of nuts, and lots and lots of grains, lots and lots of soy, like tofu, and like these vegan like fake meats and things, and it's really like irritating their guts, not realizing that that's super irritating. So then that can cause metabolic stress. So sometimes it really depends on the person, but what came first, the chicken or the egg? It's hard to know, but I think that healing your metabolism is really, really helpful. But there are specific foods that I use to help people heal their metabolism, including things like dairy, that sometimes people can't tolerate. And so at that point, it might be a good idea to get some gut healing done first. But I think that healing your metabolism has to come before gut health. And usually your gut health and your liver health begin to work a lot better. And eating bigger amounts means that your digestion is moving a lot quicker, and so sometimes they can take care of them, like the gut issues do take care of themselves. Sometimes it's just as simple as lowering stress on the body, and then the body picks up digestion and gets it back on track. But then sometimes digestive issues have gotten so out of control that gut protocols do need to be done. But there's no way to really know if things are going to take care of themselves until you really start working on healing the metabolism. So I think that comes first, because sometimes that will take care of all the problems. But then if that doesn't really work, or you're still having lingering issues, then you do need to focus on the gut. How much salt per day should we make sure we take use? It depends on the person. The more sodium-rich foods you're getting, the less you need, but it's kind of, again, to tolerance. A lot of people are deficient in salt, and so I can't really give an amount. It's more like you need to be salting your foods to the point where they taste really good to you, but any more would be too salty. So, and if you're craving any salt anytime, you need more. So like when people crave salt or salty foods, like foods that are going to provide them salt, like pickles or chips or something like that, then that's usually a sign they need more salt. But I just recommend like salting pretty liberally, always adding salt to everything, really like pretty liberally, and that's usually good enough. Is spearmint tea helpful for PCOS acne? People say that like spearmint tea will suppress testosterone, and I'm not sure about it. It tastes really good, so I drink it from time to time, but a lot of times like chugging all these teas and things is not necessarily like that helpful, but some people do see a lot of benefit. So it's really like, if you enjoy it, great. But if you feel like you're just forcing yourself to drink spearmint tea just because, and it doesn't really benefit you, then I would not like force yourself. Thank you. I love juices, and I digest them really well, and they make me feel really good. Yeah, juicing is really great. I actually, when people have really impaired guts, I actually have like a signature juice/bone broth, like a modified fast that gives their digestive system a complete rest, and I think that juices are very helpful. Is kefir and yogurt okay to take with antibiotics? Yeah, as long as you're not like pounding it. But again, it's kind of one of those things where, yeah, that's like a probiotic-rich foods. I just wouldn't take like excess probiotics while you're on antibiotics. My sister has bad gallbladder, we think, pains, and when she takes probiotics, it gets better. Could this be connected? Yeah, it absolutely could be connected. Sometimes there are pathogens in the gallbladder. Sometimes what's happening is the small intestine is not signaling the gallbladder to drain. There's a lot of things, but have her look into castor oil packs and gallbladder massage. You can YouTube a gallbladder massage, and you could Google castor oil packs. And what castor oil packs do is they actually dilate the bile ducts in the liver and the gallbladder, and it allows more bile to pass through, and sometimes stones. A lot of people that have gallbladder pain actually have really bad stones that are stuck and they need to get out. And so that can be a really gentle way. And then if you're like actually manually pushing the bile out with a gallbladder massage, it can be really helpful. Always be very conservative and do your own research on something like that, but it can sometimes be very helpful. Thank you for your response on my salmonella question. I'm feeling depleted, but going to rest and make a nourishing meal. Yes. Good, Trisha. It's just one step at a time. You know what I mean? All right, you guys, there's no more questions coming in. I want to make sure I'll give it a few minutes to for questions to come in. Okay, there we go. Dairy no longer causes major digestive upset, but I have more acne since eating Greek yogurt in the morning. Do you think it's that, or just maybe change in hormone, stress, etc.? So, you know, a lot of people think that acne is like directly a bad thing, but sometimes when your body is healing, you actually do get like a slight uptake, or a slight like kind of like sometimes your skin gets worse before it gets better. That's what I'm trying to say. So sometimes it can get better before it gets worse. It's kind of one of those things where you can decide like if dairy is the culprit. If it is, remember, it's not necessarily the dairy. It's like what's going on with the bacteria in the small intestine. So remember, always eat that raw carrot every day and see if that's really helpful to helping with the acne. And then give it a little time. Sometimes it does get worse before it starts to get better. As you learned, like as your body begins to tolerate these foods, it becomes a lot more used to them and they're not as irritating. So it's kind of like you need to kind of decide, and everyone's very different with dairy. Like some people do really well with yogurt, but like they can't touch milk. And then some people do really well with like milk and cheese, but like yogurt really bothers them. So it's like, as your resilience, your gut resilience and your hormone resilience begins to get better, you'll see like you'll get less and less symptoms from foods like dairy. And then things can be changing too. Like I know that you struggle with some hormonal imbalances, and so sometimes like when we lower stress hormones, inflammation can occur, because remember you guys, cortisol is in one aspect anti-inflammatory. That does not mean that's good. It means that when you're under chronic stress, like let's say you are running from an angry bear, your body, like let's say you stepped on a thorn, you'd still have to keep running, right? Or you would die. And so in that moment, adrenaline and cortisol really keeps you going, even though you would, like if you just sat down for a moment, like relaxed, you'd be in some serious pain, right? It's why like when people get shot in the heat of battle, they don't even feel it, because their cortisol and their adrenaline is just rushing through their veins. But the minute that cortisol and adrenaline starts to go down, the pain really starts to kick in. The inflammation really starts to kick in. And so sometimes when you're actually healing, you can see symptoms get slightly worse, like aches and pains in your wrists and your fingers and your joints, and acne, skin issues. You can actually like temporarily see those things get worse before you actually see them get better, because that's actually you seeing stress hormones go low, and you're no longer feeling that artificial high of cortisol. You're no longer feeling that, you're no longer feeling that stress high. And that's a good sign, right? But to you, you're like, oh, I got acne, like what? And it's just that your body is actually healing. So it does take some time. You kind of want to play it by ear and trust your gut on that. But I would say that as long as you're starting to tolerate it better, that looks like something is moving in the right direction. I'm sure you probably use aluminum-free deodorant. What kind do you use? So I'm not shy about talking about my qualms with like natural deodorants. They're slimy, they stain your shirts, they're oily, and they just make my armpits feel like a hot swamp mess. And so I kind of found something in the middle. I just use the Crystal Rock deodorant. You apply it to wet skin. You just wet it under like some water and apply it to wet skin. Now, a lot of people like to berate me and say that the Crystal Rock deodorant is still aluminum. And you're correct, it is, but it's bigger aluminum crystals. So the problem with like these aluminum deodorants, it's not just the aluminum, it's the aluminum that they use. In these conventional deodorants, they're using synthetic aluminum. Synthetic man-created aluminum that is very small on a molecular level and can actually be absorbed into the cells and the bloodstream and sit in your lymph fluid. And remember, you have a lymph node that kind of sits in the like underneath your armpit, underneath your breast. And so that combined with an antiperspirant, meaning that is blocking your cells from getting that junk out of the lymph, is what can drive breast cancer and cancers. But aluminum in itself, especially if it's a bigger molecular structure that can't really be absorbed by the body, is not, in my opinion, that big of a problem. So the Crystal deodorant is technically aluminum, but it's natural aluminum and it's pretty big molecularly, so it's not going to be absorbed as readily by the body. So it's going to sit probably on your skin for the most part. There might be some that's absorbed, but I'm letting my body sweat all the time, guys. Sweat it out, baby. If my body has BO at some point, I acknowledge what that means. That means that toxins are coming out. My body had something that it needed to get out, and I'm like, thank you, body. Like, let that stink flow. You know what I mean? So see BO for what it is. Your armpits are meant to sweat because you have very special lymph nodes sitting near your breasts, and we don't want that breast tissue to get stagnant. I purchased the shea butter from Now. Is it supposed to be hard to spread on? Yeah, it is hard. It gets solid at room temperature. I keep it in like kind of a warmer place so it's pretty soft, but like I do have to rub it between my hands. If I get like to be not so lazy, I'll actually melt it in the microwave with some cacao butter and I'll whip it with a hand mixer or like a stand-up mixer. I only have a hand mixer, but and to kind of make like a whipped butter. You can also put some coconut oil in that and that will keep it a little bit softer at room temperature. But I'm lazy, so sometimes I just am like scraping it out of the container and then warming it up and melting it in between my hands, but it does get annoying. I missed your response on using progesterone cream every day since I'm bleeding every couple weeks. Thank you. Well, like I said, it's really important to make sure that when you're even in perimenopause, you're tracking ovulation because if you're not ovulating, then you would just kind of want to do it like mid-cycle. So if you're bleeding every couple weeks, like mid-cycle. But if you are ovulating, then it's like, okay, wait till after you ovulate and then do it from then on. So it's important to know, even in perimenopause, if you're ovulating for the reason of just using progesterone correctly. But it's really up to you. Like some people find that using it every day during perimenopause actually can help with symptoms. So if symptoms are so bad, the progesterone helps with that. I don't see a problem, but then at the same time, like you want to try to use it as cyclically as possible. General tips for making all your liver supporting Rex more user friendly on the go. Can your chlorophyll lemonade be made in bulk like your adrenal creamsicle? Of course, you guys can always make things in bulk. I recommend it. I always say cook once, eat 3 times. It goes the same for just about anything. You can also make like a big, jar of fresh pressed like beet and apple juice and make 3 or 4 days worth. Like you can absolutely make these things in bulk. And like I recommend making a big beet salad, like with boil some beets, slice them really thin in half, slice some red onion, put some red wine vinegar, a little bit of olive oil and some salt in there, make a little salad out of it, and then have a little bit of that each day with your lunch. Make the raw carrot salad where you can like grate some carrot. You can put it in that beet salad or you can just make it on its own. You can absolutely make these things in bulk. Really like making sure you're just getting enough protein every day is really like a basic thing, like drinking bone broth or adding collagen into things, like very simple. Yes, this is crazy. This was a question that I wanted answered. I saw in the past you use magnesium spray for deodorant, but now use Crystal. Any reason for the shift, or is magnesium safe? Magnesium oils is great for using for deodorant. It just bothered my armpits. I have like very sensitive, delicate flower for armpits. Like I'm thinking, thanks guys, you're very delicate. But like even those natural deodorants with baking soda just wreck me. Like it looks like I have like road rash on my armpits. So it's the same for the magnesium. A lot of people though just use plain magnesium oil and find that it works just great for deodorant. It really is effective. It was just like when I would work out, I was like, my pits are burning, like I'm like, ow. Every time it would like scrape against my shirt, I'd be like, ow, ow. Any non-toxic foundation recommendations? Yeah, so I personally use Tarte Amazonian Clay Powder Foundation. I just really like that it gives me like, I can really build the coverage, and it can give me like a really sheer coverage, and it also gives you like this slightly airbrushed look. So for me, it's like one of my favorite foundations on the planet, and I like nothing compares. Like I've tried a lot of natural deodorants and I just don't like any of them. A lot of people like the Beautycounter like BB cream. I personally don't like it. I don't really love like liquid foundation. I don't know why. I just like, I don't like the feeling. Like it feels like I have mud on my face or something. I think like 100% Pure is supposed to be really good. Well People is a good brand. I'm trying to think of what else. I think Mad Hippie. I've heard of that one. I'm really like in the process of like, I really have the following where I could like reach out to these brands and be like, hey, can I try your product, and talk about it on Instagram? But I've just been lazy because I don't like collecting things. I feel really wasteful. But I feel like I have a duty to you guys to try these products and then tell you how I honestly think about them. And maybe I'll just do something where, like, you know, if brands send me something and I don't necessarily enjoy it, I'll just send it to one of you so you can try it. Like, we can do something like that. Shampoos. I use a Cure brand, and then I also really love Morocco Method for shampoo. Now, Morocco Method shampoos are like super holistic. So they're like not what you would expect with shampoo. They don't lather. They're mud. They're pretty much like mud shampoos. They are amazing. I really do like them. I like kind of mix my shampoos up. Like sometimes, like a couple days ago, I ran out of shampoo and I was like, I have some bentonite clay. I'm gonna try to make some shampoo. So I like mixed it up with water in my empty shampoo bottle, and I like used it for shampoo that day. It worked pretty well. So I just recommend like sticking to as natural as possible. The less you strip your hair of its natural oils, the better. I cannot like handle the no poo method. I've tried, and I just can't do it. But I try to like only use like a harsh like lathering shampoo once a week. But I really like a Cure brand, and Avalon Organics is like okay, and then Morocco Method is like bae. Body wash. Do you use any wash or simply cleanse with water? If so, what do you use for underarms? I kind of do that intuitively. Most of the time, I'm not going to wash my body with any body wash. Sometimes if like pits are kind of a little stinky, I'll use just like Dr. Bronner's Castile soap. I have like a soap bar in the shower that I'll maybe use. But really like my pits don't usually stink that bad. And when they do, the aluminum crystal will take care of it. But yeah, I'll use like something pretty natural for my pits. But I try to just wash with water as much as possible, just because you really don't want to mess with your skin microbiome that much. Like, it's just better to cleanse with water. And that's very, very true for your lady parts. So if you're constantly cleansing with soap, you're just gonna constantly create a bacterial imbalance, and you're gonna end up stinking. 100% Pure is quite good for non-toxic makeup. That's good to know. Like, I haven't really tried a lot of their stuff. I think I have like a lip liner from them, but I want to try more of their stuff. So that's really good to know. Is there a juicer you prefer? Yeah, so you always want a slow masticating juicer, not one that like spins really fast and warms up the juice. I have an Omega. They are a little bit pricey. It's like a cold pressed juicer, but they don't waste your vegetables or your fruits as much. They really squeeze like every ounce of liquid out. So I waited till that one was on sale, and then that was a big purchase for me. But it works really well. It's probably going to last me forever, and it's really easy to take apart and clean, and it's a really great juicer. So I really like the Omega, but you don't need something as fancy as that, but you are looking for a slow masticating juicer. I think a lot of people end up like wasting their money on a centrifugal juicer, or one that like moves really quickly and heats up, and it's getting your juice so hot that you're killing a lot of the enzymes in there. I also missed most of your response on this if it was answered, but can your body break out or get a rash when you're starting to eat healthier and exercise? Yeah, absolutely. So your body actually has to, there are certain toxins that can only be removed via the skin in sweat and like the sebaceous glands. And so you just want to make sure you're really making an effort to sweat that out. Take some detox baths. All you have to do is like 6 cups of Epsom salts, 2 cups of baking soda, hot water as much as you can stand, sweat that stuff out, get it out as quickly as possible. But yeah, you can absolutely like get rashes and acne and like breakouts. We call it Herxheimer's reaction or healing reaction, like a detox reaction. Obviously you want to keep an eye on it. If it's just like getting worse and worse and worse with no end in sight, there could be something else at play. But a lot of times you can absolutely, like when you start to change your lifestyle, I had this horrible dermatitis, like fungal rash all over my face for months when I first started my healing journey. It was quite awful, but I lived. I also missed most of your, I have PCOS. Is it okay that my body doesn't have a cycle for a while? I took blood tests and so far things are clear, but usually my period occurs every 3 months. Your period should always occur every month. You need either a 21 to 35 day cycle. Everybody needs a regular cycle. If there's not a regular cycle, there's something going on that's keeping you from ovulating. There's stressors there. Because remember, PCOS is an ovulation problem and you only get a period if you ovulate. Well, I shouldn't say that because you can get a period without ovulation, but you should be getting an ovulation mid-cycle, period. Ovulation mid-cycle, period. That's how it's supposed to go. And if that's not happening regularly, you're staying in that follicular phase too long, and that happens because of stress. Thoughts on using a copper water bottle, especially with a copper IUD? I've heard conflicting things about copper. I wouldn't use like a copper water bottle, just because, the whole thing with copper piping, like that has occurred in some people that had old copper pipes and they were like getting copper overload. So copper is definitely a necessary mineral. When it comes to the copper IUD, I mean, you're getting it's so small, and those copper ions, like, it's not like you're absorbing the copper. Whereas if like water is just sitting in a copper water bottle, it can definitely I would suspect or guess that it could definitely be absorbing. But at the same time, it's like we live in such a toxic world. It's like, what's better, Stainless steel has its issues, plastic has its issues, glass has its issues. So it's kind of like pick and choose your battles. But you definitely don't want to be like, if you're drinking out of copper water bottle constantly, I would think about maybe, it's hard to say, like I've never heard, it's hard for me to do research on that. Like, does a copper water bottle cause copper toxicity? Like, I don't know where I would find the info on that, so that's like a hard thing to know. So just like listen to your body on that one. Is it healthy to bathe every day? I find my body feels better if I don't. No, you do not need to bathe every single day. And the more you wash off your microbiome, because remember you guys, like your skin also has its own microbiome or bacterial balance, and it's supposed to stay that way. Like those bacteria actually protect your skin barrier. They keep you safe. And so when we like wash that off of us all the time, we're actually like washing part of our immune system off of us. 80% of our immune system lies in our gut, but where does the rest of it lie? Well, our tissue is our skin. So we got our mouth and things like that. So we got to make sure we're protecting that. And I would not bathe every day unless you feel like it. Like you're like, I kind of feel like dirty and weird. Like I need a bath. But again, like even when you're bathing, I'm recommending not using soap when you bathe unless really necessary. And so even if you're just rinsing with water, you can still kind of wash some bacteria away. So it's kind of like up to you and what you feel is right. Thoughts on the Dr. Bronner's tea tree soap on the face? It cleared up my husband's skin wonderfully, but didn't know if it was too much for the face. Tea tree oil is definitely going to clear up the face if you have like bacterial or fungal acne. So, remember when somebody has acne, it's not like you have acne. That acne is just a symptom of a deeper underlying issue. And usually it's fungal or bacterial related. And it's not stemming from your skin, it's in the gut. Harsh, like on that side of being very harsh for the face, yeah, like it's probably going to be pretty harsh for the face. You're really like drying that up, but it's kind of like pick pick your pros and cons. Dr. Bronner's tea tree is very, very natural. It's just like you really want to protect that skin barrier if you want to keep the skin healthy long term. When you use like a harsh soap like that constantly, you're really stripping the skin of its oils, and you're going to strip the skin barrier. It's going to be a lot more like not resilient to the sun. It's going to be very probably get sunburned a lot easier, get sunspots, scarring, things like that. So just like considering that. But you know, it's kind of one of those things where everyone finds something different that works for their acne. And so, you know, I'm not ever going to take that away from somebody. It's just more like, remember everyone, that if you have acne, you don't just have acne. There's a symptom of something deeper going on. There's something imbalanced, especially if it's chronic and it's not going away. If it's just kind of splashing up during a healing journey, or you're like getting like major breakoutage, you know, during some transitions, that's different. But when it's like a chronic, really bad issue, there's something deep within that's really, really causing an issue. Also, thoughts on tanning beds and saunas. Saunas are incredible. I think that sweating and opening up the pores is a great way to detoxify. Yeah, like I need it right now. I'm like quite stinky, but I get stinky when I'm stressed. So I think that saunas are super detoxifying. You just have to make sure you're replenishing. So it really depends on the type of sauna that you're using. Like if you're using an infrared, you are speeding up your metabolism. And so some people, like, they're not eating enough and then they go in an infrared sauna, or they use red light and they're like starving afterwards, or they feel like really weak and depleted. And I'm like, yeah, because your cells are metabolizing quicker. So it depends on the sauna that you're using. Steam saunas are great, dry saunas are great, and then infrared saunas are really detoxifying. When it comes to tanning beds, it's one of those things where the way that your body reacts with UVs is going to be completely dependent on your diet. And remember, the main thing is polyunsaturated fats. If your diet is mainly lots of plant fats, or you have a lot of plant fats in your tissues, or you're putting a lot of plant fats on your face or your body, that's going to interact pretty badly with the sun. That's going to photo age you quite quickly. That's going to give you, you know, that can lead to melasma and liver spots and sunspots and, you know, freckling and like sagging, aging skin. That is really what matters. And so, you know, tanning beds are safe completely relative to the person and what the person is consuming. This idea that tanning beds cause cancer is hilarious, because there's never actually been a study done or any proof of that. There have been like maybe a little bit of correlation, but then we also have like been fear mongering about the sun. And think about it, you know, skin cancer rates and aging has gotten so much worse in the past 100 years. What has changed since the 1950s? Oh, we stopped eating butter, we stopped eating tallow, and we switched it out with like plant shortening and vegetable oils, and now we're sicker than ever, and we're also getting like skin cancer at such high rates, because remember that heat and light oxidize plant fats. Plant fats are very heat and light unstable, and so when they're oxidized, they become full of free radicals, and then your body has to actually protect itself from those things. And so, you know, I personally, like, especially during the winter, I'm going in a UV, like a low UV tanning bed 3 times a week for vitamin D production and just fighting any kind of seasonal defective disorder. Like, you know, you can feel your moods get quite suppressed when there's no sun. If you live in a dark place, I do educate you about it, and I say, hey, if you're not getting any sun, you got to get light somewhere. Where is it going to come from? So sometimes like a low grade, very, very low grade, small amount of time in a tanning bed can actually be very helpful to some people for their health, but it's all relative to how, like, what you're eating. You don't want to be like consuming tons and tons of plant fats or really, really junky food and then going and laying in a UV bed, or even out in the sun. That same thing. It's going to really interact negatively with the cells. So I think tanning beds are fine. I wouldn't go like, obviously, like bake in like a high grade, like, you know, like one of those very powerful tanning beds for the amount of the longest length of time. The goal is not like tanning. It's more like go in for a low grade, slow, gradual tan, and make sure you never ever burn. And that goes for a tanning bed, but also for the sun. 17 of us here. Send Jess some love if you're so excited to support her through Fully Nourished, as she supports us always. You guys are so sweet. I know that like sometimes we have like a low amount of people here, but a lot of people watch these lives afterwards, so it's not a problem. I'm so happy that you guys are here, and I appreciate the love. And I didn't announce this live either, so this is pretty good turnout. I was like expecting like 10 of us. Where can we buy the aluminum crystal? I buy mine at Sprouts, which is like the local health food grocery store near me, but you can buy it on Amazon, I think. So excited for Fully Nourished. Yeah, I'm really sorry I haven't like announced a launch date yet, you guys. I just like I said before at my first live, I am a hot mess these days. I'm just so like stressed and so busy that I'm just trying to get like every ounce of my free time is going to Fully Nourished. Like I promise you, I'm working so hard on it, but like I don't want to keep like putting my foot in my mouth and say like, oh, here's the date, and then be like, oh, I'm sorry, like I'm a week behind. So like I really want it to be almost ready before I say like this is the date. And so I'm getting there. My goal is the end of May, but like just be patient with me. I will announce it when I'm like feeling like the end is in sight. But it will be available both to international gals and US gals during that time. And remember, if you're on the VIP list, the first 2 weeks of launch, I will be offering $100 off for your, just to thank you for your patience. Doctor put me on Synthroid 50 micrograms for hypothyroid. What are other alternatives? Getting your metabolic rate up, Nature Throid or like natural thyroid medications are also your options, but you need to make sure you're actually, when you're increasing your metabolic rate, like taking thyroid medication, you also need to make sure you're eating for that. You can't just like increase your metabolic rate without actually putting any fuel in the tank. If I don't tan, is this anything to do with diet or is it just normal for me? Just curious. It could be just you, like your genetics. It could be related, like the melanin, your melanocytes or the cells that actually produce melanin can be affected by health. That's why like people that are really ill are really pale. They look like pale and not like healthy. So there can be like something there where if you can't tan or you really have like a very light pale pallor, you're not as healthy. But then at the other time, some people are just naturally lighter skinned and pale, and so that's fine. That's normal to you. Care to share some home styling at some point? I'm sure your best is chock full of good vibes and positive energy. Yeah, of course. I'll just show you guys my office at one point. It gives me like this vibe. Lots of plants, bohemian vibe, that kind of thing. Is hemp seed oil a PUFA? Yes. Facial sunblock, Badger. Sorry, Instagram's cutting me off. I love you guys.